Well, did you guys manage to get through these four chapters? A lot goes on here.
Yes, me.
Gets very interesting. We start getting into the real nightmare of the situation. Um, it really does have that mystery story feel to it, that kind of film noir uh just feeling because of the sort of paranoia, and you have, this crime and there are suspects, and some things are just there to distract us. Did somebody say psst? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start talking about it. Um, chapters 4 to 7 of Ubik. Our first advertising blurb: wild new Ubik salad dressing. Not Italian, not French, but an entirely new and different taste. Treat that's waking up the world. Wake up to Ubik, sorry, and be wild. Safe when taken as directed. Again, with the warnings. Uh, and just, how wild can a salad dressing really be? You know how we talked about how advertisers try to be hip and cool and do something a little subversive? I wonder if it will just ever reach the point that there is actual, just unrelenting brutality in advertisements. Um, a dark picture. Like, hey, look how subversive we are. I mean, this is like, I don't know, like a horror film. Um,
Like every advertisement.
right, but there are still definitely lines they won't cross. They usually try to keep it a little subversive, but also a little lighthearted, you know. Um, and yeah, I wonder if that line will go away, fade
Um,
out. Mm-hmm.
I actually had to look it up again, even though I think you used it before. But caveat emptor, just
Mm-hmm.
it's safe that when directed, that last line in all of them is the throwaway line that once you, um, I remember this from economics, that once you throw down your money and complete the transaction,
Mm-hmm.
the seller is saying, hey, it's all on you now. We
Right.
entered this as we both parties entered this as a free interaction. No one is.
Exactly. They're like, if you get really wild and something happens, that's on you. If you get really wild with the salad dressing. Um, I remember, okay, so do you guys remember the Mentos commercials? It's a candy. And they had these commercials in which the, I don't know, main character, if that's what you would call it, does something woo crazy, and everyone looks at him or her. Why did he do that? And then he reveals that he's been eating that candy, and that explains his behavior. And then somebody did a parody of that was dark. It was, I think, darker than, maybe it was Saturday Night Live. I think it was something darker than that, like Tom Green or something, where somebody's committing a horrible crime, and everyone's, of course, looking at the criminal who's escaping, who at the final frame turns and reveals that he's been eating Mentos, and that's why he's committed a crime. Good stuff. I guess he didn't use it as directed. Okay, Runsitter comes back from his trip to the moratorium. Uh, he lands at Runsitter Associates. He did get that one piece of advice from his wife before Jory took over. She just said you need to step up the advertisement in order to save the company. So that's on his mind. Uh, he orders more advertisements. He asks how many are running currently. He says, once an hour, right? And the secretary says, not quite that. Over the course of a full day, Prudence ad appear Prudence ads appear on an average of once every third hour per UHF channel. That kind of struck me as well. there are always these little bits of technology that are now completely outmoded, like UHF frequency television, which is no longer used. That's ultra high frequency. Uh, yeah, there was VHF and UHF before, and now we have, broadband and high speed cable and so on. It's
So,
just, hmm
though digital broadcasting over a frequency is available, like I think there's digital FM,
hmm
and there may be reasons why you use FM as opposed to UHF, but it could be that one day we might see the return of digital broadcast over familiar spectrums.
That's possible. I think, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know enough about it to really speak with any authority. Um, I think I could be completely wrong about this, but I think that the broadband spectrum or those frequencies are just ultra high, right? It's like way higher than UHF. Um, if I'm not mistaken about that. I should know. At one point, I was doing cable installation. Yes, once upon a time. Um, so yeah, he wants to step up the advertising and have the commercials every hour. Uh, he mentions the Supreme Court ruling where a husband can legally murder his wife if he can prove she wouldn't give him a divorce under any circumstances. And it's funny that this is so think it through. What does this have to do with advertising for them? This is like the first thing I'm like, wait, but think it through. What do you suppose? Why is this affecting their potential advertising?
You could kill your partner under certain circumstances and thus have a new customer that now that the perp would want the victim on the other revived.
See, I'm still trying to think it through. I'm not entirely sure because
Mhm.
what are their services? Their services are their
Oh,
inertials.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was confusing them with
They're on the
Runcier.
other side, so it seems like if you were a wife worried about your husband going to murder you, you would want to hire a
And then
precog.
yeah. Or no,
to-
these are the anti-precogs.
And so it's the
Yeah,
husband
yeah.
want to hire Runcitor because the husband then wants an inertial around so that his wife doesn't know when he's going to
Right.
something,
Yeah.
which once again points out Runcitor's not such a nice
Oh,
person.
he's just he's like, hey, let the market sort it out. I'm just playing the game. It is what it is. Yeah, he doesn't have any moral positions here. A new client appears in the office. Mrs. or Miss Wirt. He says, at first he's a bit dismissive. I can't give you much time. Maybe you should get to the point. What's the problem? She says, we're having a little trouble with telepaths. Ah, that's right up his alley. See, right now he has no plan before Miss Wirt shows up. Doesn't know what he's going to do aside from increasing ads. Here's how we operate, he says. First, we measure the psi field objectively. This is skipped ahead a little bit. Basically, he kind of feels out the situation some to see whether she's serious. Uh, and then she starts making demands like you need to go immediately and you need a big team. But he says, no, we have to do some things first. We have to put our own guy in there to measure the psychic field to figure out what is needed. Yeah, first we measure the psi field objectively so we can tell what we're dealing with. That generally takes from 1 week to 10 days, depending on my employer wants you to move in your inertials right away without time consuming and expensive formality of making tests. Then he says, we wouldn't know how many to bring or what kind. So yeah, it's cool how there are all different kinds of the size and all different kinds of inertials. By the way, maybe I shouldn't bring it up now, but I've been thinking about uh, Pat's character and how her ability is supposed to be for precogs, but apparently it's not. I mean, she's just straight up lying about it. Or is that also something that she does, to the precogs? because it seems to affect everybody, not just precogs. Okay. We wouldn't know how many inertials to bring in or what kind. Yeah.
But it says specifically, I was trying to sort this out with Rand this morning. When she first meets Runcitor, she says she's anti-ketosis. And so I was
Yeah.
like,
That's
hey,
her
I
joking around, I think,
that
though.
word when I was first reading it, but maybe I should just dive into that and find out what it is. And she claims she's doing it with glucose. And so I think that's her way of kind of saying, you know, I'm a nice person, I'm sugary sweet, you know, like that's what you take when you're a diabetic and you've had to,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, but she's, when not taken as directed, she's poison.
That's right. Yeah, the ketosis thing, I interpreted that as her just being kind of a smartass a little bit, you know, like, you know, I stopped ketosis. That's also the state that, you know, those diets where people are like, I eat nothing but fats and meat. Those diets are supposed to put you in a state of ketosis where your body starts burning fat. Um, So I was reading that as I stop people from burning fat by being sweet. But yeah, again, that was just her not really answering the question.
That's an interesting thing to bring up then, because there is a lot of imagery in the book of like heat and energy versus cold and the
Yeah,
cold back and the vacuum of space. Because I was thinking the two sides are like entropy
yeah,
and uh the organizing um idea of consciousness,
hmm
because even though everything in the universe is eventually going to disintegrate during your lifetime, if you get a cut or something, it heals. And so that's due to your consciousness. And in this world, this fictitious world of the book, your
hmm
consciousness lasts even after your death into your half-life. So
mm,
that's what's holding it together.
yeah,
But there are moments when people feel very cold, and that's when they're starting to disintegrate. And there's moments when, I don't know, I think the heat thing is something, it's her messing around, but I think there's
yeah,
nothing in there accidentally.
yeah, yeah. It's also just I mean, she always has weird kind of, I don't know, non sequitur reactions to things where she just laughs all of a sudden, or I don't know. She's a strange one. Okay. We'll talk more about her. It just kind of crossed my mind all of a sudden. So yeah, diffusing a psi operation has to be done on a systematic basis. We can't wave a magic wand or spray toxic fumes into corners. Um, so he needs to get their retainer. They have their own psi who works for the company specifically, you know, in order to see what's going on with these clients. I guess it's kind of a Dr. House sort of thing. Everybody lies. That's certainly the case here. So he presses a little button under the desk to bring their telepath, Nina, into the next office where she would monitor Miss Wirt's thought processes. I can't work with these people, he said to himself. I don't know if I don't know who they are. For all I know, Ray Hollis is trying to hire me. And just a reminder, Ray Hollis is the head of another agency that specializes in providing size. So our agency, Runcitor Associates, is the one that provides the anti-size. Okay. You're hidebound, Miss Wirt said. All we're asking for is speed. And we're only asking for that because we have to have it. I can tell you this much, our operation, which they've infested, isn't on Earth. Now, Ajit was nice enough to send along a little slideshow with some vocabulary slides, so I incorporated some of them into here. Hidebound, pretty unusual word. Now, I have to point to the specific definition being used here, which is to be. She's not saying you have dry skin. Hidebound means you are bound in your skin. Hide is another word for skin, or, you know, hide like leather. So to be hidebound means to be in your skin in such a way that you can't get out of basically you can't get out of your attitudes. You can't see things from other perspectives. You're hidebound. I actually didn't realize the definition one set that there's an actual condition called hidebound. I have to say I've never heard of that. Interesting. So
I
yeah.
might go
All
ahead.
right, sorry to jump in on you.
Mhm.
I'm actually listening in the background, but I was gonna say, because another way hidebound is used is like, sometimes when like books are bound in hide,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like
That's
buy the
right.
book, you're hidebound.
That's right. Because a book binding. That's right. Yeah, yeah. It's funny that doesn't get listed here, but that is true.
That's a common way it was used during that era of writing.
Yeah. No, that's true too. Yeah. There are all kinds of bindings that you can put on books, and leather is one of them. So yeah, that would be hidebound book. So his psychic, Runsetter's psychic, speaks into the micro speaker in his left ear. Uh, Oh, that's a typo. And he heard the faint, measured voice of Nina, audible to him alone. Miss Wirt represents Stanton Mick. She's his confidential assistant. There's no one named Shepard Howard. Shepard Howard is the name that she gives when she first comes in. I'm working for Shepard Howard. But she doesn't want to divulge too much information. She's clearly resistant when she first arrives. But then we find out the project under discussion exists on the moon, on Luna. It has nothing to do with Tech Prize. It has to do with the Tech Prize, Mick's research facilities, the controlling stock of which Miss Wirt keeps in her name. She does not know any technical details. No scientific evaluations or memos or progress reports are ever made available to her by Mr. Mick, and she resents this enormously. So we just get a little psychic background. Nina ran a background check, as in, what are the thoughts in the background of this person's mind? He offers 40 inertials, which is practically his whole staff. And I was thinking about this too. Why doesn't she take all of them? I guess she doesn't know. She doesn't really know what's going to happen. I don't want to spoil it, but I guess everybody read these chapters, so I guess it's not a spoiler. But it seems like if this plot really wanted to do maximum damage, they would just take everyone.
Don't have enough bedrooms though there. It seems like it would get immediately, I mean, he employs a telepath, so it seems like it would get immediately suspicious if they had taken 40.
Yeah, too good to be true. Right.
Yeah.
Because
Also,
he's in. Mhm.
well, let's see now. I guess the telepath is. We don't know what Wirt, if she's being deceived or not.
Right.
But she thinks she's being deceptive. She thinks she works for Stanton Mick, and that's fine. Later on, they might question this in retrospect. But she apparently, in this point, is her decision making is motivated in part because she's a shareholder in the operation.
Right.
So she might not bring in a full. She's consciously figuring out how much is this going to cost me, my asset.
Yeah.
But I'm going to suggest for the future discussion, as we get there, let's see. She appears to own stock. Doesn't that appear as though
Right.
she really is working for Stanton Mick?
That seems to be the case. So her, I don't know. That seems to be genuine. But if you think about it, I mean, with the existence of someone like Pat, who really knows? I mean, maybe she had her whole history reworked. And none of these people are real. It's all just been kind of implanted.
Someone's got some feedback a lot.
Yeah, there was a little bit before. Oh, there it goes. So yeah. Echo. Okay.
That's all missed.
And I don't think it's ever going to be really settled for us. It's just there for us to play with.
And we still have all these missing size from the opening paragraph, but they didn't disappear 100 at once. They seem to be dropping off one at a time. So whoever is getting rid of the special mutants does not apparently have the power to get rid of them all at once with the snap of a finger.
Oh, there will be more about that. Okay, so that's pretty much it for chapter 4. It's really just, this is all setting up the big scene. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't finish with this slide. So yeah, Miss Wirt hires 11 of the inertials. And Pat signs her paperwork to officially become part of Runsiter Associates. Runsiter tells her starting salary in all cases begins at 400 creds per month, figuring on 20 hours a week, and you'll have to join a union. It's funny, the mine, mill, and smelter workers union apparently absorbed the inertial market. They're the ones that signed up all the Prudence organization employees 3 years ago. I have no control over that. Pat indicates also that she makes better money working at the kibbutz. But she signs up anyhow for her own inscrutable reasons. So that finishes out chapter 4. Chapter 5, can't make the Frug contest. Helen. Stomach's upset. I'll fix you, Ubik. Ubik drops you back in the thick of things fast. Taken as directed. Ubik speeds relief to head and stomach. Remember, Ubik is only seconds away. Avoid prolonged use. Always with the warning. There are a couple that don't have warnings, or at least one. Frug is a dance. This again is from Ajit. A vigorous dance to pop music from the 1960s. We have a little kind of Austin Powers looking group over here. Apparently fruging. So that's what that is. This is something that will get you back in the mood to frug. We meet an anti-telepath named Tippy Jackson. She's been stationed by Runsiter in a hotel room. She sleeps all the time. Sorry? She sleeps all the time, but she's in her dreams doing her work. An electrode planted in her brain perpetually stimulates EREM, extremely rapid eye movement, sleep. So while tucked within her percale sheets of her bed, she had plenty to do. At this particular moment, at the beginning of the chapter, she's in a dream state. And in the dream, she's fighting against mythical Hollis functionary endowed with enormous psionic powers. I can't be myself while you're around, her nebulous opponent informed her. On his face, a feral, hateful expression formed, giving him the appearance of a psychotic squirrel. Visual aid.
Did you make that, or did
No,
you find?
I found it. I'm like, hey, somebody has made a psychotic squirrel. I almost put a picture that somebody made that's a taxidermy of squirrels doing the scene from Psycho with the shower. The Psycho squirrel. The Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, you know, famous scene. Aren't you an employee of a Prudence organization? The Hollis telepath demanded, looking nervously about. If you're the stupendous talent you claim to be, Tippy said, you can tell that by reading my mind. I can't read anybody's mind, the telepath said. My talent is gone. I'll let you talk to my brother, Bill. Here, Bill, talk to this lady. Do you like this lady? So Bill, looking more or less like his brother, says, I like her fine because I'm a precog and she doesn't postscript me. Now, postscript being used as a verb, Ajit again included the definition. You guys, I'm sure, have heard postscript in the form PS at the end of a letter. Thing is, it's not typically used as a verb. Now, here's the thing. I've been thinking about it. I wonder if the ability that Pat describes when she first introduces herself is postscripting, because he's a precog. And remember what Pat said she does? She's able to kind of uh I don't know, redirect the precog so that they think that they've been seeing the future, but she's kind of chosen the future that they see. We don't really get an explanation of what the verb postscript would be. She doesn't postscript me.
She doesn't amend me, maybe. Like a postscript might amend the body of the letter.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how the things work. Like you have to, because that's what they were talking about with Pat at the beginning. Like something has to happen first for her to affect it.
Yeah. But do you remember that discussion where they said how the precog's ability works? It's like he has several slides in front of
Yeah.
him, and then
Mhm.
one of them is more brightly illuminated, and that's the one that's the precognition. And that's what they do. So that's like their whole thing. So I can't help but feel like it's related to that.
Right. So what Pat does is she amends that, and then they're not even aware that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah,
But
that's
this
what I
lady
think.
is not Pat, so all she can do is turn off. She's an anti-telepath, so she turns off the mind reading ability.
So the possible takeaway there is that these Matt and Bill. Okay, so you guys read this, you know that other people had this dream too. Matt and
Yeah.
Bill know of Pat. That's kind of what I was gathering from this. If that's what postscripting is, then they know of Pat, and they know of Pat's power.
Right. It
Power
seems
of
like
Pat.
that all 11 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because apparently her power is unique and new. No one's seen anything like it. Okay, so let's see. He shuffle, I think that's supposed to say. He shuffled his feet and grinned, revealing great pale teeth as blunt as shovels. I that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature. He paused, wrinkling his forehead. How's it go, Matt? Deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up. Matt the squirrel, like telepath said, scratching meditatively at his pelt. He even has a pelt. So we find out this is from Richard III. Richard III, if you're not familiar with the play, is a cruel, tyrannical, he's a villain of a king. A murderer, a liar, everything.
And he's also a hunchback. So
And he's also, yeah, he's deformed. That's right. He's also born premature. He feels like the universe was against him. That's what this sent before my time into this breathing world. I mean, the real,
think he killed the two princes in the tower.
yeah, yeah. The real Richard III, they studied his skeleton, and it turns out he just had scoliosis, and it probably wasn't even that bad.
But these stories, these Shakespeare plays, Shakespeare's writing in the time of the Tudors, and I think this was written during Elizabeth's time. So he's myth building. He's got to make the Plantagenets, is that how you say their name? The former dynasty, he's got to make them seem bad and terrible and brutal because man, Henry VII was as brutal as they come, and some people think Henry VII was in fact the person who killed those princes in the tower, Elizabeth's father.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so this is a bit of propaganda.
Yeah.
But
in any case, go ahead.
It also fits into the story because, I mean, it's perfect for the story because that's what these guys think they are. Sent into this breathing world, scarce half made.
This whole monologue is to kind of justify bad behavior that's coming up later. Like, woe is me. Now I can just, I mean, look what the universe did to me. I might as well just take out my vengeance and be a villain. So yeah, Bill the precog nodded, I remember. And that's so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. from Richard III, he explained to Tippy. Both brothers grinned. So they were, it's almost like a threat. We're about to Richard III you. Miss Jackson, Runsitter said. Oh, by the way, Tippy wonders whether she read Richard III and whether she's remembering, how could she remember it? So maybe it is really some psychics acting on her and not a dream. She's not sure. Do you guys know about cryptomnesia? I thought about that, but it's apparently not the case here. Cryptomnesia is where you remember something on a very basic level. So for it was first, the term is coined by Carl Jung, and also Philip K. Dick. He was into Jung, so there might be something there. But the idea was that Jung found that there were some patients that he had who would remember a song, but they couldn't remember the words, and they would remember the song while they were doing something, and then when they would study up later, they would find out that the lyrics had to do with what they were doing. So there was this remembering that was dug up from deep down somewhere, right? It's interesting stuff. It's also known as accidental plagiarism. You can come up with an idea and totally believe it's yours, but it's actually, you heard it somewhere before and you don't realize it. So the idea that she might remember Richard III and only read it as a child, and it turns out that it's relevant to the situation, would be something like cryptomnesia if there were no Matt and the other one, forget his name. Okay. Miss Jackson.
They're Matt and Bill. That's
Matt and Bill, that's right. Miss Jackson, Runsitter said, I'm glad I caught you. So Runsitter calls her on the vid phone. A group is forming under Joe Chips and my direction, 11 in all, a major work assignment for those we choose. We've been examining everyone's history. Joe thinks yours looks good, and I tend to agree. So he's summoning up the team, Runsitter. He wants to get, you know, all of his best inertials. Maybe the reason they don't take all 40 is not just because it would be suspicious. Maybe they know which 11 would be selected, you know, because they're the best ones. And they specifically want to get rid of them. In any case, we know Runsitter said to Gigi that as individuals, they perform well. It's all down here on paper. He rattled the documents on his desk. But how about together? How great a polyencephalic counterfield will they generate together? Ask yourself that, Gigi. That's the question to ask. So the idea is they're going to the moon job and they're going to just knock this thing out of the park. So he needs his best people. What an ill-assorted bunch. So the whole ragtag crew gets together and we get some more great descriptions of people's fashion. What an ill-assorted bunch, he thought pessimistically. A young string bean of a girl with glasses and straight lemon yellow hair wearing a cowboy hat, black lace mantilla, and Bermuda shorts. That would be Edie Dorn, a good-looking older dark woman with tricky deranged eyes who wore a silk sari, a nylon obi, and bobby socks. Francie something. This is great. A part-time schizophrenic. She couldn't get any full-time work as a schizophrenic. Part-time schizophrenic who imagined that sentient beings from Beetlejuice occasionally landed on the roof of her Connaught building, a woolly-haired adolescent boy wrapped in a superior and cynical cloud of pride. This one in a floral muumuu and spandex bloomers. A muumuu is kind of a shapeless dress for you who don't know. It's just a funny image. This guy is in a floral muumuu and spandex bloomers. Well, they're like the old-fashioned underwear, but made of spandex. Runsitter had never encountered before. Okay, we're gonna have a momentary aside because I've been thinking a lot about this, all these descriptions of the fashion. So first we find out that Miss Jackson, when she arrives, uh, she's wearing ersatz vicuna trousers and a gray sweatshirt on which had been printed the now faded full-face portrait of Bertrand Russell. So Bertrand Russell uh, is uh, was a philosopher. He's responsible for logical positivism. He worked with Whitehead. He was the mentor of Wittgenstein. Um, it's just funny that he's he's on her sweatshirt. Um, yeah, he's an interesting figure, and even became kind of a subversive character later, and an activist. And he was in peace protests way back in the day. Um, but yeah, I was thinking about these crazy outfits and how uh, I picked up some other descriptions here from later, but how our idea of the sci-fi aesthetic, at least for me, my idea of the sci-fi aesthetic has been so overrun by like what you see in films, and there it's kind of it's almost like it's settled. You know what I mean? And I think very it's very destructive. I don't know. It's a very narrow idea of what science fiction aesthetic should be. Um, Here it's something completely, it's like from a fantasy story, more like what we would associate with fantasy. Fuchsia pedal pushers, pink yak fur slippers. I think he really wanted to get this alien feeling through. This is also in the William Gibson Idoru. I don't know if you guys remember, or I know somebody mentioned having read that. So like one of the characters who's like a Japanese uh hacker, he wears like Mickey Mouse hands as a kind of regular out part of his outfit, and big cartoon character shoes also. Um, so yeah, yak fur slippers, snakeskin sleeveless blouse, and a ribbon in his waist length dyed white hair. And then Ashwood with his customary natty birch bark pantaloons. I don't know if they're really made of birch bark. Uh, Hemp rope belt, peekaboo see-through. This made me laugh. Peekaboo see-through top and train engineer's tall hat. It's just like completely off the wall, right? He wore old-fashioned, hip-hugging gold lame trousers. Gold lame is a fabric that shines like gold, looks like gold. Yet somehow created a stylish effect, so he pulled it off. Perhaps the egg-sized buttons of his kelp green midi blouse helped. In any case, he exuded a grand dignity, a loftiness surpassing the average. So yeah, these fashions, and I wanted to just pick out a few other aesthetics. Did anybody see the documentary about uh Jodorowsky's Dune, the aborted project that he had? The director Alexandra uh Jodorowsky, or Hodorowski, I think is his name. He's a really crazy guy who was obsessed with making the Dune picture. And they did all of the concept art. The concept art was actually done by a guy called Mobius. You might have heard of him. He's a famous illustrator. In fact, that's the upper left picture there is from the film that was never made. The aesthetic was completely off the wall. Like I have a couple of other pictures from that. And I don't know. He was so obsessed with making that film that he literally raised his own son to be Paul Atreides from Dune, like raised him to be Paul. Um, Strange childhood to have. The entire group of filmmakers was kind of a cult that were following Jodorowsky. The reason that the emperor there looks like Dali is because they hired Dali to be the emperor. There are so many funny stories around that film. Dali was like, I will not do it unless you pay me more money than anyone has ever been paid for a film. And so they were like, wow, okay, geez, I don't know. So they worked it out on a technicality where they paid him, if you do the math, more than anyone has ever been paid per hour, but they only have him in the film for like 30 seconds. So it's like he gets his way on a technicality. So he can say, I was paid, more than anyone who was ever paid to be in a film. But yeah, a lot of the costumes from the concept art looked very almost like Flash Gordon-ish. And I don't know, it might have been great. Maybe he dodged a bullet by not making it. It could have been completely just over the top, maybe too much. I don't know. Over here in the top right, we've got Logan's Run, a classic science fiction film from the 1960s. Maybe you've seen it. It still holds up. It's not a bad film at all. It's about a society in which lifetimes are limited by a giant machine that consumes you when you turn 30. But the aesthetic is completely different, as you can see, right? It's almost hippie-ish. Lower left, that's from Altered Carbon, which is a relatively recent science fiction show. Some of you might recognize this guy. He used to be Max Headroom. Michael Fruer, I think is his name. And oh, I forgot the name of the artist who did the bottom right-hand painting. Let me see if I can find it really quick. No, I'm not sure. But yeah, you notice what is it that kind of put us into the current aesthetic? So yeah, these on the left, these are also from Altered Carbon. These on the right are from Jodorowsky's Abortive Project. And I guess some of them still kind of look pretty sci-fi, but if you guys know the Dune characters, Baron Harkonnen, the big, huge, fat guy, that's him in the bottom, second from the left. It's just a completely different approach. So what is it that's...
I think of Dune is almost more like speculative fiction, because even though they have spaceships and stuff, it definitely kind of follows a Bronze Age sensibility of, like...
It winds up covering a long time too.
Yeah,
it's
but
like history.
I do think that in most science fictions, especially from the 60s, the imagined universe, people wear more like uniforms than they wear fun clothes, and people tend to dress more alike than differently in our imagined idea. And before spandex was invented, like if you watch Twilight Zone, people are wearing silver lame, but it's always kind of close-fitting clothes. And in this book, yeah, all the men tend to wear skirts and dresses, and they all have such fantastical different clothes, and nothing seems like matches from our point of view. Like Asari has that open space at the waist, but an obi is like the Japanese belt that you wear with a kimono. So like none of it matches.
Yeah, it's completely eclectic. It comes from everywhere. But it just got me thinking to what exactly settled the aesthetic in popular culture. And I guess like it's a combination of things, including just the fact that the steady production of films in the genre, that's what settles it. But I can't help but think that there's also this influence of kind of, I don't know, a sort of militarized mindset, perhaps. Oh yeah, I had to include the picture from Metropolis. It's like 1929. Completely different. But now it's all like gritty, and it looks like everything is supposed to be practical. So I feel like there's this thing where they say, okay, what would science fiction be like taken to some great level? Well, it would be that everything is totally practical. Everything does something and it doesn't stand out, and that's a part of it, but also a kind of militarized way of thinking about things as well. I think about Star Wars, for example. I remember being a little kid and seeing those buttons on Darth Vader's chest and wondering what they did. You know, because that's always been creeping in the background. Everything must have a purpose. That's what the aesthetic is. It's just the aesthetic of not having any embellishments. That's what you're meant to believe. Like, actually, there aren't any decorations in here. Everything is just the machine or whatever. Right?
That's what I think the difference is. I think that when things go like speculative fiction, like Star Wars also kind of follows that Bronze Age idea with the lightsabers and stuff, then the clothing is going to try to look medieval-ish.
Yeah.
Why does anyone need a cape in the future? But the Dune
Right.
costume and the Star Wars costumes, they have capes. Lord of the Rings, it's like, well,
Yeah.
they had capes when they had capes because zippers weren't invented. But when it's supposed to be sci-fi, like hard sci-fi with the spaceships and everything, then the costumes tend to go, as you said, more military, more uniform,
Yeah.
close to the body, none of this capes stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this book is just different because it's not either. It's not medieval. It's not,
I know. So there's this thing that happens because I like to try to find some, pictures as visual aids of characters, but I feel like I can't do them justice because of their outfits. Every time I go, I'm like, okay, I'm going to find somebody to represent this character. And then I'm like, none of these people are working for me. They're all dressed like normies. It doesn't, so I feel like I'm doing them an injustice by settling a picture and saying that's them.
I did think the birch bark pantaloons, though. I was imagining, like, if you go to the South Pacific, the ancient Pacific Islanders made cloth because they didn't have silk, they didn't have cotton or whatever. They would take the bark of trees and soak it in water and pound it until it was thin, and it's called tapa cloth. And of
Oh,
course,
wow.
because it's hot, you don't have to wear clothing very often. But if they had clothing, they tended to either, everyone's seen the hula girl's grass skirt, but
Yeah.
that was from Tahiti. In Hawaii, they didn't have that kind of grass, so they would make skirts out of tea leaves, which were ti, which were really big green flat leaves. But they also made ceremonial skirts for like the big wigs out of tapa cloth. So that was what I was imagining the birch bark pantaloons were. You just get
Okay,
rid
yeah.
sheets of birch bark, soften them up, pound them until they're, pliable. It's still a pretty stiff thing to wear.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd like to see those. Okay, how many of the rest of you are anti-precog? So we're about to get this demonstration of Pat's power. He says, hey, who are precogs here? 3 additional hands appeared. The 4 of you will undoubtedly get a great bloop out of meeting and working with Ashwood's most recent discovery, who aborts precogs on a new basis. Perhaps Miss Conley herself will describe it to us. He nodded toward Pat. So the scene completely changes at this moment. Suddenly, Runsetter finds himself standing in front of a shop window on Fifth Avenue, a rare coin shop. He was studying an uncirculated US gold dollar and wondering if he could afford to add it to his collection. What collection? He asked himself. I don't collect coins. What am I doing here? So this is just a complete, I didn't skip really anything there. This is the transition, right? As soon as he says, Pat, would you like to demonstrate? And then boom, suddenly he finds himself collecting coins for some reason. Joe Chip starts to realize that something is weird. There we go. Yeah, he realized she's been doing something. Pat, I can't put my finger on it, but things are different. He gazed wonderingly around the office. It appeared as it had always. Too loud a carpet, too many unrelated art objects on the walls, original pictures of no artistic merit, whatever. Glenn Runstetter had not changed. Shaggy and gray, his face wrinkled broodingly. He returned Joe's stare. He too seemed perplexed. So they're both like, what's going on? It turns out that in this reality, Joe and Pat have gotten married. It's like, this is your wife. Anyway, how to continue? So he's back in the office now, suddenly. We must each ask ourselves why Stanton Mick took his business to another organization. So in this reality, she didn't hire the 11 inertials, but Stanton Mick instead went to some other company. Logically, we should have gotten the contract. We're the finest in the business, and we're located in New York, where Mick generally prefers to deal. Do you have any theory, Mrs. Chip? I did it. How? With my talent. What talent? You don't have a talent. You're Joe Chip's wife. So in this constructed reality that she's come up with, that's what happened. They mentioned, I should have put the thing about the ring. like Joe remembers picking out a ring together with her, and she's wearing it. Um, she in fact says that she's going to keep it from this little jaunt, this little journey into another reality.
Um,
Hmm.
this brings up the notion, yeah, that she can, I don't know what we're going to call it, alter the past, but she can retain a few elements from
Right,
the wrong track. In the very first time, she retains a piece of paper and
right.
shows it to Joe Chip, even though they have bypassed, they've not used that. So
Yeah, that's the thing. It has physical effects, whatever it is. I mean, she's able to grab items from the other reality. That's for sure. Um, so after they get back into their current, or I don't know, proper state, um, they get ready to head off to the moon for this job. He gets out, so this is Runciter gets out his round gold anachronistic. Anachronistic is from another time. That's what it means. Anachronos. Uh, pocket watch and studied it. 3:30. Pratfall 2 will take off from the main roof field at 4. He snapped his watch shut and returned it to the pocket of his silk sash. Pratfall, as Ajit included in another definition, is a fall in the buttocks. Now, this is a term that's used in show business, especially back in the day when you had your Buster Keatons and your Charlie Chaplins doing physical comedy. Pratfalls, spit takes. That's where you'd see something and spit your drink out. Um, it's an interesting choice for the name of the ship. Pratfall, humiliating mishap or blunder, falling on one's butt. Yeah, I guess he had his reasons.
yeah, it seems odd that you name a spaceship that you're about to climb into a pratfall, because usually, like airplanes, you're worried about an accident.
Exactly.
Also pratfall is often used with the word pitfall, which I didn't include. I guess a pitfall is a trap, right?
Yeah, a pitfall is a hazard, and one that people often stumble into. Um, but yeah, pratfall, that term, at least in my experience, I only ever really heard that term in reference to show business, in reference to old physical comedy. And I mean, not just old physical comedy, it's just that physical comedy is not as popular anymore. But I mean, I guess who was doing physical comedy? Chris Farley. I can't think of anybody who's doing it now. Um, being clumsy, falling around and stuff, slipping on banana peels and all that. Maybe he was just a big Buster Keaton fan. Um, he might have even known Buster Keaton. The guy's been around forever. So they head off to the moon,
Wait,
and then,
to go back, it
uh-huh.
said in Ajit's thing, it says first known use 1930.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's something about going back to the 30s because we also have those
Oh.
trolley dodgers. Doesn't that come up in this? Oh, that comes up later. Anyway, so I'll stop saying anything. Okay, nothing older than 1930 seems to show up.
And you see, I think that's the reason that it came up in 1930 is because that's when you had that kind of genre of silent film doing that sort of comedy. Okay, so chapter 6. We wanted to give you a shave like no other you ever had. We said, it's about time a man's face got a little loving. Well said. Sorry, we said, with Ubik's self-winding Swiss chromium, it is Swiss, by the way, never-ending blade. Never-ending blade. The days of scrape are over. So try Ubik and be loved. Warning, use only as directed and with caution. Again, the warning. I think back to those razor commercials where they're like, this new Gillette has 75 blades. It will blast your face off. You'll never shave again.
So in this time period when the book was written in 1969, was there no such thing as a disposable razor?
I think there were the ones where you took the sort of rectangular razor and you mounted it inside of a handle, and the part that was disposable was just the rectangular bit. I think that's what they had. I don't think they had them like we have now, where you throw the whole thing away.
No, but I think they had systems where you could, I think, draw the metal out. I think I saw one. I didn't
Yeah,
understand how
that's
to
what I
use
mean.
that.
It's
But
like, have you seen those, like the classic razor blade that's a rectangle with some sort of
yeah,
like butterfly on the sides? Not a butterfly, but like the
yeah,
shape.
but
Mhm.
you dispose of those, whereas I
Yeah.
think there was one system where it was one piece of continuous metal so that you wouldn't have to go, it would be stored back within the blade somehow. I
Mm.
can't remember. I saw something like that. But yeah, no, the classic blades are still made
Yeah.
in hardware stores, and you can even buy them to have one of those razors.
Yeah. People use them still. Mm. Okay, so now we head to Luna, the moon. Zoe Wirt said cheerfully, "Welcome to Luna." Her jolly eyes enlarged by her red-framed triangular glasses. Via myself, Mr. Howard says hello to each and every one of you, and most especially to Mr. Runsiter for making his organization available to us. This is the opening of the chapter. They arrive at the moon. They have everything explained to them. Here's the deal. You're going to stay in these nice quarters. We have these bunk beds. Most of the services are free, but there are some coin operated things, of course, but we're going to give you a giant bag of coins. I'm kind of skipping ahead, actually. Immediately, Runsiter instructs Joe to go ahead and take the psychic readings or the psychic force readings against the wishes of Mr. Howard and Miss Wirt. He sets up his equipment and she says, "Are you attempting to take measurements?" Mr. Howard expressly contraindicated that, as I explained. We're taking a reading anyway, Runsiter said. Mr. Howard, this isn't Stanton Mick's business, Runsiter told her. So he says, we're taking our readings. There's nothing you can do. Miss Wirt runs out to get Mr. Howard to stop them from taking a reading. She says each bedroom has a large closet, coin operated. And to start you all off, she gives them, yes, a large plastic bag full of coins. It's interesting how the coins represent freedom of movement in this world. Like literally getting out of your house costs something. And she's like, here, you guys are free. You can walk wherever you want. Dimes, nickels, quarters, the lot. Would you distribute these equally? A gesture of goodwill by Mr. Mick. The industrial research installations adjoining these living quarters keep several doctors on standby. In addition, there's a small medical ward with beds for the ill. Coin operated? Sammy Mundo inquired. I love this. The reason I put this up is it's just a funny idea. All our medical care is free, but the burden of proof is on the shoulders of the alleged patient. Wow. Think about that. It's a system that's more like the legal system. You have to prove you're sick to the doctor, and the doctor's like a judge.
Well,
So
in America, they're always having those ads. The drug companies, this wasn't true in 1969, but it's true now. They advertise directly to the consumer, and they
right.
say, "Go
Ask
tell
the
your
doctor.
doctor
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
want Ubik or whatever." So I saw this little cartoon where somebody is watching TV in the first frame, and the ad company says, "Go tell your doctor you want this." So the next frame is he shows up and tells his doctor, you must give me just whatever this drug is. And the doctor's like, why? And he's all, I don't know. You just have to give it to me.
The commercial was really good. Guy really got me in my
Happening
fifties.
here. It's like in the future, you have to prove you're ill. You go online, you find out what you have.
Right.
Once you say, no, I really have a tumor, then they have to treat you for free.
Well, no, that's the because I was thinking about it. So that means you're probably just paying for the collection of evidence. And you couldn't just use like, WebMD. That's not evidence. It's like, you wouldn't use Wikipedia as evidence in a trial. You'd have to go out and so like you pay for the doctors to do tests. That's like you pay for basically laboratory work, and then this is just how I imagine it. And then you present it to the doctor, who's like a judge. He weighs the evidence.
Well,
Um,
I just think to myself that when I go to the doctor, because recently I went and I had to pay my copay to
mhm.
get an x-ray done. And that's annoying to have to pay in the United States for each and everything you do. But I always tell myself, but actually, the cheapest thing they can say is, I don't see anything, I see no further problem. So even though it feels irritating to pull out your wallet and pay $100 here and $40 there, when in other countries, healthcare is universal,
Mhm.
that is the cheapest thing they can say, that I see no further problems. But in this case, it seems like, so if I had done that, no copay, I would have had to have paid for the whole test. But if the test came back and showed, oh, there is a broken bone, then they would then they
Right.
would
Yeah. You're
have
like,
said something.
please let it be broken, please. Um, so yeah, that's funny to think about. Uh,
And
mhm.
yeah, I mean the American system is absurd, but under this setting, the individual is paying for the diagnostic work,
Mm.
and so the individual would probably expend as much as they can within reason to their expectation of how ill they really think they are. Even
Yeah,
if
yeah.
their budget were unlimited, or I guess that's hard to work in here, but if their budget was large, they would
Mm.
still probably stop expenditures when it sort of rested on the probability of some sort of decision rule on when they think, okay, that proves that I'm sick. But
Right.
then once you pass that juncture, all medicine is free, all treatment is free. Well, it's absurd, and we can even think about like how that would pan out in some sort of
Yeah.
game theory sort of scenario. But
Yeah.
it's not really based on medical decisions at all, because there could be times when you do a very expensive test because you really think, well, I don't know, it's an absurd system. But then again,
Yeah,
the
and also
American system is absurd.
we don't know what their standard of evidence is either. Like you could say, "Wow, look, doctor, I cut my own leg open to show you this tumor. See, it's right there." You know, is it more like there are cartels? No, you have to go to this guy. He has to see it, and he has to give me X report in order for me to accept it. But it's just funny to think about it being more like a legal setting than a medical setting. The burden of
One,
proof is on the alleged patient. Um,
one doctor accused me that he lost with his time with me because I'm healthy. He was very disappointed.
Was he joking? I mean, like
No,
that sounds like a just fun
no,
thing to
it was
say.
not
Like, I wasted my
joke.
time with you. You're healthy.
No, it was not joke. I was so um, uh, I couldn't believe what I hear.
That's really funny. Get out of here now. I have sick people to talk to.
It would be fun. It was a joke, but it was not a joke.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if other professions did that? Like the police show up and there's no crime and they're like, ah, there's no crime here. Might as well shoot someone. Just sorry. Um, okay, so Francesca indicates that she received a visitation, a particularly impressive one. I'm not surprised, says Don Denny. A throng of precogs, this is her visitation, and telepaths descended from a ladder, spun of finest natural hemp, and to the balcony outside my window. They dissolved a passageway through the wall and manifested themselves around my bed. Waking me up with their chatter, they quoted poetry and languid prose from old-time books, which delighted me. They seemed so sparkling. One of them, who called himself Bill, so other of these inertials also had the dreams of Bill and Matt. Wait a minute, Tito said. I had a dream like that too. I should have mentioned this or put it on the screen. Tito tried to tell Joe before they left about the dream, and Joe was like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's all right. He turned to Joe. Remember I told you just before we left Earth? Didn't I? I dreamed that too, says Tippy. Bill and Matt, they said they were going to get me. His face twisting with abrupt darkness, Runsetter said to Joe, you should have told me. Runsetter suddenly realizes this thing is probably a bad scene. Things go pretty badly from there. Suddenly Stanton Mick appears. Pot-bellied, squat, and thick-legged, Stanton Mick perambulated toward them. He wore fuchsia pedal pushers. Those are like half pants, not longer than shorts, but shorter than pants. Snakeskin sleeveless blouse and a ribbon in his waist length, dyed white hair. It's like a really crazy anime character. His nose, Joe thought, it looks like the rubber bulb of a New Delhi taxi horn, soft and squeezable and loud. The loudest nose I have ever seen. So he's a fat little knob-nosed man. Wanders in. Joe finishes his readings. There's no field. Our inertials are nullifying it. Our counter field is greater. No, there is no psi field of any sort within range of my equipment. I pick up our own field so far as I can see. So far as I can determine, my instruments are functioning. I consider that an accurate feedback. So there's nothing there for them to resist. Suddenly, as Runsetter starts directing everybody to pack up, we're getting out of here right now. This is obviously something bad. Something is wrong. Then suddenly Stanton Mick, squeaking in his metal insect voice, floats to the ceiling of the room, his arms protruding distendedly and rigidly. Mr. Runsetter, don't let your thalamus override your cerebral cortex. This matter calls for discretion, not haste. Calm your people down. Let's huddle together in an effort to mutually understand. His rotund, colorful body bobbed about, twisting in slow transversal rotation. So now his feet, rather than his head, extended in Runsetter's direction. So he's floating. He's weirdly rotating. I've heard of this, Runsetter said to Joe. It's a self-destruct humanoid bomb. Help me get everybody out of here. They just now put it on auto. That's why it floated upward. The bomb exploded. So he was a bomb, a humanoid bomb. Bad news. It looks like, I'm going to be saying that a lot. Everybody's okay except for Runsetter. Runsetter lay dying on the floor. In 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Dom Denny would be correct. Oh, Dom Denny says he's dead, but he's not quite dead. Listen, everybody, Joe says, since Runsetter is injured, I'm now in charge, temporarily anyhow, until we get back to Terra. He instructs everyone to grab their guns if they have them. By the way, it's mentioned that, of course, the guns are forbidden based on the guild rules. Is it the Society? I think they're called. He says, grab your guns if you have them, and 6 of them go out and grab weapons. They realize they have to get out of here. The goal is to get Runsetter into cold pack so he can be put into half-life. And they have to do it fast or he'll lose brain function. Someone asks, why doesn't Pat undo this? This is after they've gotten up the elevator. I could have included more about that. They get up the elevator to go back to the ship, and Joe confronts Pat. Can't you go back to the time before the bomb was detonated and restore Glenn? It's too late now, she says. Why? That's it. Too much time has passed. I would have had to do it right away. Why didn't you? Wendy asks. Pat looks at her. Did you think of it? If you did, you didn't say. Nobody said. You don't feel any responsibility then, Wendy said, for Runsetter's death, when your talent could have obviated it. Pat laughs at this. So this is what I mean. She's laughing at this. She seems, well, I don't know, a little evil. Obviate, yeah, to cause not to happen, basically. Yeah, meet or anticipate and dispose of, just sort of like dispose of in advance. So yeah, we could have avoided this with Pat's ability, or perhaps this is Pat's 3rd attempt and she's gotten the right outcome finally. with someone like Pat around, there's really no end to the amount of suspicion you should have. They expect resistance on the way up the elevator, on the way to the ship, but surprisingly, there is no resistance. Why do they let us go? Seems all too easy, except for the fact that Runciter is dying. Joe asked himself as he and Al Hammond stood Runciter's lifeless or apparently lifeless body upright in the floor-to-ceiling cold pack chamber, automatic clamps closed about Runciter's thighs and shoulders supporting him, while the cold, glistening with its own simulated life, sparkled and shone, dazzling Joe Chip and Al Hammond. I don't understand it. You know, I actually forgot to put this part where we switch for a second to Runciter in the cold pack or somewhere. There's this part, it's very confusing because it's after, okay, it's in the next chapter, I think. After they get him into the what's it called? Half-Life. Well, when they get to the facility, or maybe it's before that. Well, at some point, for just one paragraph, we switch to Runciter, and then we go back to Joe. Yeah, I'll find it after we get through this. He seated. Sorry?
Recall that.
I think Pat did this confusion.
Sorry?
I think that Pat make this confusion with her
Right.
time changing.
That's possible. The thing is, it's there, and I'm not sure what it is. It's very brief. So he seated himself in an aisle seat where he could watch the four inertials haggling over the correct way to direct the ship. Somnambulantly engulfed by the dull, dreary ache of shock, he got out a bent cigarette and lit it. The cigarette, dry and stale, broke apart as he tried to hold it between his fingers. Strange, he thought. This is going to keep popping up. The cigarette, apparently, is very old. Did it age us? Wendy asked from behind Hammond. She stepped past him and seated herself beside Joe. I feel old. I am old. Your package of cigarettes is old. We're all old as of today because of what has happened. This was a day for us like no other. So yeah, something strange is going on. And there's, okay, we'll get to that in a second. So chapter 7, here's our ad. Perk up. Pouting household surfaces with new Miracle Ubik, the easy to apply, extra shiny, non-stick plastic coating. Entirely harmless if used as directed. Saves endless scrubbing, glides you right out of the kitchen. Okay. So some sort of surface protectant in this case. So they need to go to that Zurich facility from the beginning of the book, to that Swiss moratorium. He picks up the microwave audio phone provided by the ship. He dials the regional code for Switzerland. By putting him in the same moratorium as Ella, we can consult both of them simultaneously. So, of course, Runciter would also plan on continuing to run the company from Half-Life. At some point, Wendy indicates that she wants to marry Joe Chip. This is the other strange thing about Pat, is that Pat seems to have an attachment, a jealous attachment to Joe, in spite of her heartless demeanor in other regards.
This sentence confused me. I'm going to marry Joe Chip, in that it seemed like they were all in the same room. They were all talking. Joe Chip is present. So I don't get why he doesn't hear that, because from the first he laid eyes on her, he thought she was so great. He dreamed of being her.
I interpret it as she said it so that he couldn't hear it. I mean, with this somber, introspective voice with childlike seriousness, I'm going to marry Joe Chip. And Pat overheard it, but he didn't. That's the best I can figure. Because, yeah, it seems like he would react to that.
Because they were all standing there talking, and it's kind of disembodied voices a little bit in that time.
Yeah.
He seems like very
separate.
He seems like a very passive, victim-like person. So even later on, he invites her to his hotel ostensibly, but he seems like he has no agency with respect to the women in his life.
he's urged to invite her to the hotel by Al. See, even that is kind of passive. Like, he doesn't do it of his own full volition. Al is like, you should invite her to the hotel. He
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
that's
pushes him to
immoral,
do
he
it.
says. Yeah.
Yeah. See, he doesn't even want to.
Right,
Side,
that's what I thought was weird. He wanted to be with her so badly. He finds out she wanted to marry him. His friend slash employee says you should invite her to the hotel if like your goal is you don't want to be alone. And then all of a sudden he goes into this kind of fakey excuse. All I could think of is he's afraid of Pat. That's why he doesn't want.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think so
yeah.
too.
The wrath of Pat. And knowing Pat's power, I'm not so sure that's not
Absolutely.
necessarily a bad idea.
I mean, I think it more or less even says that because he talks about, oh, I'm going to leave Pat, and then Al is like, you're not leaving Pat. Think about what she can do. And that's why he's like, you should go to a hotel.
I have a subtle Al Hammond comment. In the back at Runstetter Associates, when Runstetter first calls a meeting, he meets Al, and he's never met him. He even says, "Oh yeah, you're one of our best. I should have met you before."
Yeah.
And in the replay, after Pat is interrupted, they again meet, and he just says, he's just checking. He's worried, like, is this the same team as before? And I didn't verify that the names were the same of the 11, but he passes over Al more like he knows him, like he's retained some residual memory. He just says, "Oh yeah, Al Hammond's here."
Yeah, I remember that too. I just kind of interpreted that as he knows that the guy works for the company. He's seen his name. I don't know. Incidentally, I put together the list of names, and it turns out that there are 11 people total. So it's not that some of them are not repeated. It's just like from the first part to the second part, you combine the names and you get 11. Not even including Pat.
I took it to be they are the same people,
Yeah.
even though they weren't all individually named.
No, they're all individually named. There are 11 names.
They weren't all individually named before plus after, but I did. It's 5 men and 5 women, so I figured out the women are Francie, Spanish, Tippy Jackson, who had the dream, Wendy, who's in love with Joe, Pat, who's kind of scary,
Edie,
and Edie Dorn, and then the 5 men are different people: Don, Debbie, Al Hammond, John Ill, the kind of retarded little boy, and some of them.
Who's the one that's no smarter than a raccoon or something? What did they say?
That's John Ill.
He only like nominally knows how to speak or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording. It was pretty funny.
But nullified Estol Malapone.
Yes, he's super powerful, but apparently he's like, what would the word be? It's like he's, I don't know, like he's got a condition. He's a superpower. He's a true definition of what would be the prodigy. If you look at the roots of
idiot savant or something like that.
Yeah. If you look at the word, the roots for prodigy, like it's not the same actually as the root for prodigal. Those are not related, actually. They sound like they are. Prodigal is wasteful. But prodigy, if you look back at the original meaning, it's like a monster. It's like something that shouldn't exist in the natural world. So when someone is said to be a prodigy, it's like in an older usage, it would be like they should be in the circus or something. Look at this 2-year-old who can play the piano perfectly. Yeah, like you would pay, whatever, whatever coinage to see the child play at the carnival. So it was almost like a freak is the idea. So yeah, I guess he's a real prodigy in that respect. So yeah, she says she's gonna marry Joe. Oh, Pat says, apparently with some, black eyes ignited, so she's jealous. Are you really? Can you change that too? Wendy says, with your talent. Pat says, I'm living with Joe. I'm his mistress. Under our arrangement, I pay his bills. I paid his front door this morning to let him out. Without me, he'd still be in his Connaught. and our trip to Luna would not have taken place. He eyed Pat, a complex expression on his face. Someone goes on to say, well, we would have taken the trip eventually, but it is a good point. She's facilitating all of Joe's, freedom, basically. So he really is trapped, in sometimes in a very literal way in his apartment, can't get out because he doesn't have any change. They get the phone book. And this is something else I was really puzzling over. They're going to call the moratorium and say, we're coming. Checks his wristwatch, 10 more minutes of flight. They use the phone book, but the phone number that's given is obsolete. The phone says Tinley. This is a recording. It expelled the punch card vigorously. The number which you have given me is obsolete. If you need assistance, place a red card in. What's the date on the phone book? Ild examined the information on the rear of the box, 1990. 2 years old. That can't be. This ship didn't exist 2 years ago. Everything on it and in it is new. Okay. Now, in other cases, we have items getting old, right? We have the cigarettes breaking apart. We have later on the cream goes rancid and the coffee gets moldy. But
the monsoons of the year.
Sorry?
Sorry.
So in this case, though, the phone book, okay, it reverts to an older version. It's like a different thing. That's like if the cigarettes changed to an old logo or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's one thing where there's one kind of aging you could consider, like, the physical ravages of the passage of time. I don't know, oxidization, stuff like that. But that's not this. Like, this is like informational. It's about
The cigarettes are aging and going into the future like they're decaying, but the phone book is retroing. It's going backwards in time. It doesn't. We're back to the two opposing forces. Entropy is creating these stale cigarettes and the things that flake apart and decay. But
it is.
Phone book is being held together by some kind of consciousness.
I don't know. I'm not sold on the idea that the phone book and the cigarettes are in a binary. I think that they're on the same side. It's just that in the case of the phone book, the aging is not just about, nothing is said about the physical object itself, aside from that it's a box. It's aged presumably as much as the box could in 2 years. But the thing is, the information surrounding it has also aged, so to speak. Yes, Ajit?
If we accept the latter half of this slide, the ship and everything in it was constructed together. I want to let Vasily speak, but if we assume that the ship and the phone book are the same age, maybe the spaceship itself is actually from 1990. This is an alternative. Perhaps Pat did something to cause the spaceship to have been created 2 years sooner.
Maybe. That's possible too. I don't think they've given us what we need to really sort it out. It's just really an interesting way of thinking about the idea of aging in one sense, in a physical sense, in another, the idea of obsolescence. That that other part of this object's identity, the non-object part, is getting old also. I don't know. I still have to think it through. Yes, Vasily, what did you want to say?
Well, it looks like they aged in 1 day because cigarettes are getting older, and like also the spaceship is retroing. Like it looks like 2 years passed in 1 day, something like that.
Yeah, it could be. But it seems that well, yeah, they don't say anything about the ship itself, but I suppose that's also possible. It's also just a strange thing to think that it's not possible that somebody carried an old phone book onto the ship, as if the only way a phone book could be on the ship is if it, came with the ship. I don't know. It's just, I haven't really worked it out properly, and I don't think that it can be totally worked out. That's kind of one of the things about this book is there are a bunch of slippery little objects that you're never going to get a hold of. And that's fine. It's fun, actually.
In what year is this happening?
The story is happening in 1992.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The future. They did a bit on the Conan O'Brien show for years where it was the year 2000. Even they did it well into the 2010s, where they dressed up in futuristic clothes and said, "In the year 2000." Okay. So Joe says there's been an accident. This is to Vogelsang. What we deem an accident, he says, is ever yet a display of God's handiwork. In a sense, all life could be called an accident. And yet, in fact, I don't want to engage in theological discussion, he says, not at this time. Yeah, I'm having a family tragedy. Why? It's, by the way, not a family tragedy, his employer. But notice how they do have a apparently deep respect for each other. It is like a family. This is the time out of all times when the consolations of theology are most soothing. It's like, please stop. Vasily, did you have something else?
No.
It turns out that the half-life is a Swiss invention. And according to impartial surveys, the average length of half-life of a given individual in a Swiss moratorium is 2 full hours greater than individual in one of ours. So the Swiss seem to have a special knack. Joe says, the UN ought to abolish half-life. It's interfering with the natural process of the cycle of birth and death. Mockingly, Al Hammond said, if God approved of half-life, each of us would be born in a casket filled with dry ice. I feel like, in fact, I kind of know to be the case because I've seen some interviews with him. He's not completely anti-technology. I mean, he's definitely disturbed by a lot of technological developments, but also enthralled in some ways. So it's this ambivalence. So he's kind of, you might think, wow, he must be a real, like, what's the word? Who are the guys who smashed the machines in protest?
The Luddites.
The Luddites.
Yes.
Yeah. You might say he must be a real Luddite, this Philip K. Dick. Sounds like it. But no, he also kind of pokes fun at himself here with this, because it's such a I'm sure you've heard the saying, like, if God intended us to fly, we'd have wings. That's, what people said when airplanes were being invented. So he's kind of poking fun at himself here a little bit. If God approved of half-life, each of us would be born in a casket filled with dry ice. He orders some coffee after sneaking into the cafe because he doesn't have change to get in. So he's a real, he's like,
this is what I noticed about him, but he actually does have change to get in, because not only did Pat give him some money, but the lady gave John Ild coins to pass out to everyone. He's just a cheap bastard. He slides in there, he tries to get it on credit, but then when he's pressed, he doesn't have a coin.
He's always
that. He's just a jerk.
He's always trying to. He's hustling. He's hustling every day out here. That's what he's. That's what he's doing. And he has bad priorities. He want the thing. I also thought about that too, and I got the impression that a postcred is worth more than it costs to get through the door. But that could be just something that is in my head for no reason. So yeah,
I could get change.
He get change. Well, apparently not, because change gets old in his presence. He orders coffee, cream or sugar, says I wanted to mention this thing too, but I didn't get enough. I didn't get to hash everything out here towards the end. I was a bit busy this week, but the ship's ruling monad. That's oh God. That's a philosophical concept from the mathematician. I can't remember his name now. He simultaneously came up with differential calculus at the same time as Newton. What's his name? It'll come to you. We can cover it. We can cover it another time because the final session, as you guys may know, we do just general talk, so we can bring this back up later. But I I remember reading this and saying, "Oh, I've got to talk about this," but now I've forgotten about it. He has a name that people always pronounce as if it's German, and then any professor will correct you and say, "No, it's like this." I can't remember. It'll come to me.
Leibniz, is that it? Godfrey
Yes,
Wilhelm
Leibniz. Because if you say Leibniz, any professor's gonna be like, "No, it's Leibniz." He doesn't pronounce it.
It's always I.
I know. No, I agree. I've had this discussion with people before because, like, I was the one being corrected about it, and yeah, it turns out he pronounces it Leibniz. But anyway, yeah, he had a concept of the universe with these monads that make up everything, where there are sort of ruling monads, and those are consciousnesses. So like you are sort of a collection of monads, and the ruling monad over all of these other sort of animal part monads that make up the body. Uh, it's interesting that this choice of words was used here. The speaker of the shop's ruling monad. So it's like the shop is one of those Leibnizian structures, and the I guess barista machine is the ruling monad. Uh, Interesting way of putting it, but so he says both. The little window opens, a cup of coffee pops out, 2 little sacks of sugar, and some cream. 1 international postcred, please. Yeah, then he's like, charge it to the account. He tries to get out of paying. Ever hustling. Insert the proper credit card, the speaker says. They haven't let me carry around a credit card in 5 years. I'm still paying off what I charged back in. 1 postcred, please. It began to tick ominously. Or in 10 seconds, I will notify the police. He gets mad and has a little rant. One of these days, people like me will rise up and overthrow you. At the end of tyranny, by the homeostatic machine will have arrived, and I should say, will have arrived. The day of human values and compassion and simple warmth will return. And when that happens, someone like myself, who has gone through an ordeal and who genuinely needs hot coffee to pick him up and keep him functioning when he has to function, will get the hot coffee, whether he happens to have a postcred readily available or not. He lifted the miniature pitcher of cream, and furthermore, this cream, or whatever it is sour. So he threatens the machine. One day we're going to take over things again. The machines are, they run everything. First my cigarette, then the 2-year-old obsolete phone book and the ship. Now they're serving me week old sour cream. I don't get it, Al. Drink the coffee black, he says. Get over to the chopper so they can take Runsitter to the moratorium. The rest of us will wait in the ship until you come back. Then we'll head for the society office and make a full report. Joe picks up the coffee, and the coffee is cold, inert, and ancient. A scummy mold covered the surface. He set the cup back down in revulsion. What's going on? He thought. What's happening to me? His revulsion became all at once a weird, nebulous panic. So the coffee's old, the cream has gone sour. They head back to the Vogelsong. Through the cabin of the chopper, from a dozen sources, the sound of Beethoven's Missa Solemnis rolled forth sonorously, with the many voices saying, Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi, over and over again, accompanied by an augmented symphony orchestra. So I went ahead and translated the Latin here. Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. Vogelsong wants to do this like a church ceremony with lots of music and fanfare and so on. They're waiting to find out whether they're going to be able to even put Runsitter into the half-life, because apparently it doesn't always work, if too much time has passed. It can happen that you're just out of luck.
Ubik by Philip K. Dick is a novel that explores super.
Oh, sorry.
That's not me. That wasn't me. I only want to hear my voice. So yeah, they're impatiently waiting to find out whether Runseter will even be able to be saved. In that state of impatience, Joe decides to just go ahead and call a precog to try to find out whether they have any hope. So yeah, he goes to phone a precog, and of course, they're calling Hollis's agency because Hollis has the precogs. I'll get one on the line right now. Give me a quarter. Al says no, and he sort of threatens him. You know, in a manner of speaking, you're my employee now. You have to do what I say or I'll fire you. So the boss is like, give me money or I'll fire you, which is just funny. He calls Hollis, the agency, lifts the receiver, listens for the tone, drops in the quarter. The phone says, sorry, sir, can't accept obsolete money. So again, the quarter clattered out of the bottom of the phone and landed at his feet, expelled in disgust. Again, the machines have feelings, and this time the machine feels disgust with this disgusting money. What do you mean? He said, stooping awkwardly to retrieve the coin. Since when is the North American Confederation quarter obsolete? I'm sorry, sir. The coin which you put into me was not a North American Confederation quarter, but a recalled issue of the U.S. America's Philadelphia Mint. It's merely of numismatical interest now. So, as Ajit included here, this is the collection of coins. Actually, this doesn't properly, but that's numismatics is coin collecting. So yeah, basically the machine says this coin would be interesting to a collector, but not me. I need actual live currency. One of the employees, I kind of skipped this part. One of the employees watches this whole interaction and comes over and trades some Swiss francs for the coin. Apparently he's a collector. So he gets some Swiss francs that are functional, and then he makes the call. On the line, the girl says, Mr. Hollis instructed us to put your call through to him. He wants to handle your needs personally. Would you hold on a moment while we put you through? So just a moment, Mr. Chip. The next voice you hear will be Mr. Hollis's, God willing. Just strange to end the sentence with God willing. Does the girl not have faith in the phone system? Who knows?
That's a biblical idea that, because I knew some evangelicals in my town, where you're not supposed to acknowledge that you know the future according to their religion. And so you should never, it's a quote from the Bible. Jesus said, you should never say, I'm going to go here, or I'm going to go there. You should always say, God willing. Like,
right.
If that's well, then I'll go there.
Yeah, it's in Islam too. Inshallah is God willing.
So I guess some people are doubling down against the size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to realize this girl, she works around these people all the time. She's probably losing her mind. So her face vanishes, and then the grim blue face with recessive eyes swims into focus, a mysterious countenance floating without a neck or body. The eyes reminded him of flawed jewels. They shone, but the faceting had gone wrong. The eyes scattered the light in irregular directions. Hello, Mr. Chip. So this is Hollis. Hollis knows he was going to call because they have precogs. Hollis knows everything because they have psychics. They were expecting his call. So he's just there to rub it in a little bit, you know? Joe immediately starts accusing him of murder. The society will receive a full report on your murder of Glenn Runseter. They own a lot of legal talent. You'll be in court for the rest of your life. He waited for the face to react, but it did not. We know you did it, he said, and he felt the futility of it, the pointlessness of what he was doing. Hollis just ignores all of that and says, as to the purpose of your call, remember, he was just calling to find out whether Runseter was going to be salvageable. As to the purpose of your call, Mr. Runseter will not. And then Joe hangs up at that point. I like that Hollis's voice is called a slithering voice that reminds Joe of snakes crawling over one another. Nice, evocative. So the owner of the moratorium had sidled into the lounge, looking nervous and haggard, but attempting at the same time to emit an aura of detached, austere prowess. We did what we could. At such low temperatures, the flow of current is virtually unimpeded. There's no perceptible resistance at minus 150 G. So, as stated by Hollis, it's true, Runciter cannot be saved, cannot be put into the half-life. He notices again that the subtle background music has been there the whole time. The same as on the chopper. Dies irae, dies illa, the voices sang darkly, solvet seclum in favilla, teste David cum Sibylla. The Verdi Requiem, he realized, day of wrath, day that will dissolve the world into burning coals, as David bore witness with the Sibyl. Okay, that seems seems to be some foreshadowing. Tuba mirum spargens sonum, the voices sang, per sepulchra regionum coget omnes ante thorum. The trumpet will send its wondrous sound throughout the earth's sepulchres and gather all before the throne. Okay. I think there's maybe one more after. Yeah, this is the discussion where he realizes, at first he says he's going to get away from Pat. And Al's like, you're not getting away from Pat. That's not happening. Think about Pat's abilities, her powers. So then he says, okay, I'll rent a room here in Switzerland. That's actually Al suggests it. So as per your outlined proposal. And remember, yeah, Al pushes him to invite, what's her name? Was it Wendy?
Wendy.
Yeah. And he says it's immoral. But he thought Al's right, it won't work. Pat, or even something worse, will move in and destroy me. I am doomed in the classic sense. I'm going to use that every time now that I say I'm doomed, which is surprisingly often these days.
What? So I didn't.
Not classical.
I know, it's just funny.
I didn't look up the word doomed. What is, what classical sense? What is the full meaning of doom? Or
Doom is I know what it means, but I can't think of a concise way of explaining it. Doom is the end or destruction of something. If you're doomed, that's you're done for.
Doom
You're
is
finished.
Fate or
Fate,
destiny, especially
Destiny.
adverse fate, unavoidable if fortune.
Yes.
So that's the classical sense. He can't escape his fate. But now here are some other meaning. Oh, wow. There's an obsolete meaning of doom, which is a statute, enactment, or legal judgment. So if he's doomed in the classical sense, maybe it's that. Maybe he's been judged and found
wanting. I don't know. I don't think he's saying, "Oh man, I'm going to court." I think he's worried for his existence at this point. But
to ordain or fix as a sentence or fate. So
I
I
just
guess,
like the phrase. I just find it funny. I'm going to use it in the classic sense. I'm doomed in the classic sense.
so I guess there's two different meanings, slightly different that are the definitions. Doom can either mean you're destined, as in this was decided at the beginning of time and cannot be changed, or you can be doomed in that somebody ordains or fixes that because as your fate, like it started out as a statute, like you were found guilty,
Right.
but
So
it has
that's
over
it, yeah.
time to mean that, you know, something bad is about to happen.
No, it's just that I would also kind of as a joke, I would use I'm doomed pretty often, just in like when I would miss the bus and I'd be like, I'm doomed. Because my friends found it funny. But now I have something extra to add to it.
Sorry, is it connected with predestination or something? Because I remember that Tolkien uses that word. That's his favorite word.
Mount Doom. Yeah.
Doom.
Isn't there the Doomsday Book? Isn't that related to doom?
Yeah, Doomsday is the end of the world. That's what Doomsday means. So like the final day of existence. Okay. So yeah, then an image thrust itself into his agitated, fatigued mind. A bird caught in cobwebs. Age hung about the image, and this frightened him. This aspect of it seemed literal and real, and he thought prophetic. But he could not make out exactly how. The coins, he thought, out of circulation, rejected by the phone, collector's items, like ones found in museums. Is that it? Hard to say. He really didn't know. He's trying to figure out what is going on. Mors stupebit et natura cum resurget, creatura judicanti responsura. Death and nature will be astounded when all creation rises again. Okay. That's the end of this chapter. A lot of stuff I didn't get to cover that I really wanted to, but again, I was so busy this week, I didn't get to put everything here that I wanted. We wound up going overtime anyway, so I guess it'll go for the final session. Remember, guys, if there's anything that we didn't get to, we can talk about it in the final session where we have just kind of open discussion over all parts of the book, and you can, bring up really anything you want to. It's a good time. We call it the mopping up session. All right. So that's it for now. And again, if there's something in specific that you would like to talk about in the session, just send me an email.